right. And so now I have the pleasure of introducing you to Annette Mason. Annette has a fascinating background. She really, really does. She started off in operations and she meandered through her career in a very interesting way. And what I would say about Annette now, she is the most intentional person, and she's exploring things in a way that I I I mean I only dare to do. And she is really, out there with creativity. She takes notes, which you and uses diagrams and pictures to help explain it. And she has up-leveled, what she's helping people with in a way that's really fascinating. So Annette is a sabbaticalist. She's probably the first label of her kind ever. She is teaching people about this. She's spreading the word. She's helping people go through a sabbatical or a break in a way that helps them renew and grow in just countless ways. I'm very, very excited to have her here with us. And we're going to be going back and forth on questions and stuff. But Annette, why don't you give yourself a little intro here?
Thank you, Christy. Yes, I'm Annette Mason. Here's a little show and tell. So I call myself a sabbaticalist and a succession architect. And what that means is I use sabbaticals and succession planning in tandem when I'm working with organizations, um, because it is a way to grow capacity at the individual, the team, and the organizational level. So it de-risks key person risk. It can increase enterprise value for private companies. And for individuals, it's a very important opportunity where they can take a pause and work on something with intention, um, while while helping their team figure out how the work gets done when they're away. Um, and those steps are crucial for it to be generative and for it to be a win-win-win. Um, I also work with individuals co-designing their sabbaticals because, believe it or not, people actually fail a sabbatical. Um, and that happens for three different reasons. But after explaining that as the overview of what we're going to talk about today, the way I got here is I grew up in and out of this country. I had a lot of interesting experiences from having that global perspective starting when I was 2. Um, my background is um, in business with a systems management master's degree and executive leadership degree and master's. I see the world very holistically and as systems. And so that's how I ended up taking my career and my life experiences and becoming a sabbaticalist and a succession architect.
How fun. Well, let's dive into some questions. What do you say?
Let's go. Christy, how about if I start with a question to you?
Go for it.
So, when you hear the term sabbatical, what comes to mind?
A break. Really, it's like let me just take a break and rejoin life. That's what I think about. It's like, step away from the harried life, the demands of work, and focus on, you know, uh, digging into the garden and spending time with family and friends and maybe going on an extended vacation. But nothing more heady than that.
Yes, yes. And thank you for describing that. Um, a lot of times, I love that you said something about expanding or enjoying life. Um, that is part of it. Um, and you also mentioned vacation. A lot of people think it's an extended vacation. Other people think, oh, yeah, I'm not in academia. I don't have a sabbatical. Um, so that's one thing, is to demystify. It is very interesting that people in all walks of life and all stages of life now are participating and taking something like a sabbatical. And my definition of a sabbatical is when you are stepping away from what is routine to focus on something different. And I've worked with people that have done everything from stepping away to um, get clarity and try and figure out what's next, to writing a book, to people on the adventure of a family sabbatical. So,
That's interesting. So you talk about succession, and I've heard that before. I mean, I see succession as, kind of a defined activity that you do as part of your team, and it's separate from the sabbatical, and um but you're like integrating it. It's like the lived experience that you talk about. And what do you mean by that? Because I haven't really seen it so coupled.
yes, um, it it can be coupled, um, and there are various processes and steps for succession planning. Um, in the way that I address using a sabbatical in tandem with succession is actually doing the work of helping the leader step away. So collaboratively designing how the work will get done so that people are taking a fresh look and not prescribing how the work gets done, but what needs to be done during the leader's absence. And so it's an opportunity for people. It might be easy for me to perceive I could do Christy's role. I've worked with her a number of years. I see what she does. And I aspire to be in that position. It is a much different experience for people to start stepping into the roles that they don't have presently and grow their skills. For the leader, it's an opportunity to, during that collaborative co-design process, to download the operating manual, no matter how well defined and how well people experience the work. There's oftentimes how things are getting done or how somebody addresses something that's walking inside as an internal operating manual. For the leader, depending on what stage they are approaching in succession, it gives them an opportunity to explore what's next. Because stepping away from a role like leading a company as a CEO or any of the C-suite roles, or even your profession, is an identity shift, and it's an opportunity to start exploring.
Well, and that's interesting because you talk about the identity, and so much of us have our identity wrapped into our profession, right? And um, but you know, I understand the process leading up to the leader's sabbatical, but what actually happens within the organization while the leader's away, and how does the leader kind of feel about that all taking place, and then potentially feeling out of place when they come back?
Well, all of us have a defined number of days that we don't necessarily know what that definition is, that will be in our roles and in our positions. So building a resilient business is part of the responsibility of all of us in participating in business. Um, so so the feelings part of it that you're describing, um, there's no doubt that some people want to hold on. Recently at the main TED, the 5-day TED conference up in Vancouver, I hosted what's called a brain date. And the focus of that was the paradox of pause, letting go to step into what's next. And so part of what you're talking about is having the comfort and the confidence to let go. But as a leader, we have a responsibility to help grow our people. And so this is an opportunity to help people really step into the roles and responsibilities. What we what we don't want to have is succession plans that are just plans on paper. I've been part of organizations that have exercised succession plans and have created beautiful documents, but have rarely actually implemented what they have designed. And this is actually a real rehearsal of practicing and growing people while
You
you're
know,
growing yourself and preparing.
yeah, when I was part of a few organizations, we talked about it on paper, having a succession plan. And it was like, okay, so in fact, when I was at Disney, I was told, okay, you're due to be my replacement. But we didn't talk about how that was going to happen or anything. And then somebody else was brought on board and they said, okay, well, you've been replaced and this person is. That person failed and then I regained my position. I mean, it felt really weird and it was totally on paper. And it was like, wait a minute, this is the succession plan? It feels very transactional and it didn't feel like I was being prepared to step into a role.
Yes, I've had not quite the same experience, but I've had the experience being in a global company and having people come to me and tell me that I'm in their succession plan
Mm.
and I wasn't aware of it. And so how can I be prepared or how could and in this case, it was an executive that was based in the Northeast. And I'm San Diego based, although I traveled extensively with mergers and acquisitions, both in North America and in Europe. Um, but there's a lot of presumption there. And so the reality, if that executive had to go away overnight, or that executive was preparing to leave over a 6 to 18 month exit, um, there's a lot of assumptions baked into that succession. So
I
what we're
Yeah.
talking about is pragmatically trying to practice and rehearse the growth and transition of a company, and a team and an organization. And also back to our personal lives, people individually take sabbaticals. Sometimes they're self-funded. And I've done that 3 times myself.
Interesting. Justin, you have a question.
Yeah. So first of all, good morning. So my question is that I think I've struggled with this in my past when I've worked for big companies. I've worked everywhere from Fortune 500 to Fortune 10 companies, right? And I feel that they're very still stuck in like the 1980s, where if you don't work like 50 hours a week, you're a slacker. And so anytime what I would propose a sabbatical, it was kind of like, oh, you're ready to quit. And it felt like if I was to do that, that I would be jeopardizing my job. And so I was curious, how do we approach this so that it's less, I mean, of course it makes sense. Everywhere else in the world, they do this. So how do we, make it sound and make sense for us without having to feel scared about losing our job at the same time, if that makes sense?
Yeah, more
Yes.
normalize it.
Yes. So part of it is, and that's why we're having this conversation today, is to help people normalize it and help people understand that a lot of companies are operating this way. And everything from companies that start up to big organizations that use sabbaticals. It is not mainstream by any measure at this point. But back to your question, Justin, how do you do it and not jeopardize your role? In some organizations, I can't say that there's a way to do it and guarantee that you won't jeopardize your role. If you're ready and you are looking for a break and it is in the framework of your company to ask for extended leave, um, or if they have a sabbatical policy, um, being mindful and thinking about what creates a win for the company and what creates a win for you and your team is one way to approach it so that you're really designing something that is generative for everyone. Um, Now, if you think proposing it still puts you at risk, that is a risk reward, judgment you need to make. Because if you're ready to go, the benefit for the organization, if you're collaboratively co-designing the work with your team, you're basically helping people understand what you contribute and what you're doing so that you're really strengthening the resilience of the organization. Um, what I am not trying to do is I'm not trying to create sabbaticals for companies to go, that's a way we can, download their thinking and then we may not need them anymore or we won't welcome them back. There's organizations that operate that way no matter what. We read about layoffs, we read about things that are done over Zoom. Um, I'm really trying to work. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm inviting people to understand there's an architecture that can work, that can be very growth oriented and good for each level of the organization. Um, while I was at TED, I talked with an executive of a Fortune 100 company, and she had seen my profile and she goes, I wanted to talk to you. I've had an experience recently. One of our executives took a sabbatical and they put somebody in place. And our team dynamics and our morale suffered terribly. So there was no collaboration with that. And it happened to be an individual that is very good upward facing, but not good with team dynamics and as a collaborator. And so it was very unfortunate because the people involved didn't experience the benefits that could happen if people were collaborative. And that just talks to the nature of that particular organization, and probably what measures and what ways they are looking at their individuals. I would suspect that if they have any kind of 360-degree process, it's it's weak, if anything, but maybe they don't operate with one, because they didn't have the insight that the individual was not a team player and a good communicator.
So you talk about, and I like this. It's like taking sabbaticals and well, and laying out the succession plan as building capacity. And that I feel like needs to be emphasized within companies because, one way you look at it is a sabbatical, which gives a leader a break. But to actually say, well, the whole sabbatical process helps the organization build capacity. Is it that overt? Are the conversations that overt?
Yes, yes. For the other thing that is happening with that is when people step away, the team dynamics by just having a player go away, change. And
And
people,
dramatically, and sometimes not for the best, right?
well, so so part of it is putting some scaffolding in place and, you know, designing how the work will get done. And how I help people collaboratively co-design how the work gets done is the same thing I was doing in post-merger integration. When you do mergers and acquisitions and you bring people together, oftentimes there is some reorganization of roles, responsibilities, who's doing what. Um, in some cases, it might be that there's going to be some compression. I was very fortunate that the things I've worked on, people might feel competitive with each other, but we were always very growth oriented. So we weren't doing things like we're putting two companies together and we're right sizing now and 20% of the population would go away. So it was architecting for growth and leverage of insight. When people, depending on what we know about the organization and what the strengths and where people don't have experience, that's really the opportunity in the collaboration and co-design space.
So we talk about the leader's presence or absence, and then but the impact on the resilience and the value of the company. I, honestly, Annette, I have a hard time wrapping my head around companies who are really focused on profitability and et cetera, that they're really taking the time to think about the resilience of their company and the leaders. And I don't know, I mean, I have doubts that people really think about the value of a company and the ability for a leader to step away for a period of time.
So,
Increasing.
so, so I, again, we're
But
not
I think
talking
it's
about,
thoughtful.
we're not talking about every company, but there are many companies that do things to successfully transfer their business. And
Which
and
seems so thoughtful and intentional.
right. So are there companies that don't do this? Absolutely. And are there people that think about profitability in such a way that they have it disconnected from their enterprise value and what so if you talk to buyers in a mergers and acquisitions market, in private companies, one of the number one risks in mid-market and below, so we're talking sub $1 billion revenue companies, uh, is transferability of the company. And so they will discount the offer given to a private company, oftentimes, if they feel that it's key person dependent. And if those key people are not part of the deal or don't stay, the value of the company is suppressed. So it is in everyone's best interest to have proof points. So this is a proof point.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And so, what makes that whole structure of sabbaticals and succession planning, what makes it stable versus fragile or risk
Oh no,
versus
so doing it um, and a collaborative co-design makes it stable. The structure on paper is fragile. And oftentimes, depending on the size of the organization, there's not even a plan on paper.
right?
So, so, just to look at it, what we're talking about is creating a structure. And that's why I talk about architecture. We're creating the architecture for an organization to learn together and leverage that growth. And every time a person steps away, the insight people get, both the employee insight, the individual insight, but the collective insight of when somebody steps away, we might get new visibility of what Christy does or what Bill does or what Cindy is capable of. And um, and I could step back and go, wow, I stepped into Christy's role. I understood some of the dynamics. I didn't realize how much it takes to have relational um, with my clients, how much time and effort, and it's a continual relationship building versus a book of business. So there's new insights that people can get that help them understand what they really want to do, what they're capable of doing. And boy, those development goals for the next year become way more insightful and bought into.
It really does. I can absolutely see how it really does grow people. And I wonder, and to do it so thoughtfully and intentionally with the whole understanding that you build capacity, you build resilience, you develop people in a way. And then, some of the things that come to mind, it's like it's a paradigm shift for so many employees. And look at today's what we're in today. AI is scaring so many people, right? Will I lose my job because of AI? Um, uh, a leader steps away, that means that they're probably not coming back, and then I have a target on my back. Um, I like this person. Maybe I need to look for another job. I mean, imagine all of those things because we're talking about a shifting paradigm.
Right. Those those factors exist regardless. And so this is an opportunity to take agency. And I think one of the things you mentioned is that some people might be in transition. Um,
Oh yeah. Well,
and,
yeah,
and
many of
and
our
so
community
so
is.
when you talk about the AI as part of the overall transition, yeah, a lot of things are changing. And to look at companies that are thinking this way or trying to anticipate changes, um, companies are that fly the flag of conscious capitalism or are B Corp. Is everybody familiar with those phrases? Anybody have a question?
I think a lot of people have questions.
Well, I mean about B Corps or conscious capitalism.
I saw
These
some heads nod that they have questions.
Okay. Okay. So a B Corp is a certification where you are not just looking at profitability, you're looking at all the stakeholders. So you're looking at your employees, you're looking at your customers, you're looking at profitability, the community, and the environment. Conscious capitalism is also stakeholder minded, so it's looking holistically. In businesses that are run this way, it is an orientation of thinking about how do we operate as a business and how do we think more holistically. So the openness to have something like this um, is seen often in these kinds of businesses. But if you look at any of the best places to work lists, you often see things like flexible PTO, unlimited PTO. Although sometimes unlimited PTO, some people will say it really means zero PTO because the pressure is on you to take the leave. Um, so again, you look at your environment and what kind of environment that you're in.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, let's talk about when the leader comes back. So, how does that re-entry happen? Because then I want to shift to the other topic of uh, leaders in transition.
Okay. So reentry is an important aspect, whether you're operating individually on a sabbatical or if you're working inside of an organization. So the leader has gone away, or the sabbatical taker has gone away, and they come back. So this period of time, let's say it was 3 months, everybody has had an opportunity to work differently while the leader has been away. The leader has been on their own journey and they're coming back. So all have had an opportunity to grow. All of them have had an opportunity to have new insights and clarity of how they contribute, where they might have challenges, and it's time to individually reincorporate the leader, but also look at it's a giant after action review of this period of time of what have we learned and what do we want to keep, and what do we want to let go of, and be intentional, because it can be easy to somewhat snap back into old behaviors and old dynamics. But what you want to do is, so it's a reintegration.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to shift now because we have people in transition and it wasn't necessarily by their choice, although sometimes it was. They stepped away for personal reasons. How can somebody look at this time in transition um, and take advantage of the concepts of being on a sabbatical and using it for personal growth rather than the fear-based of I've got to get another job?
Well, I'm going to address it from not the financial aspect of it, because you know what your finance situation is. Um, Oftentimes, people have time, and it can feel a bit lost. And this can happen whether you intentionally retire or you make a major move, um, or you find yourself laid off in a reorganization. Um, with taking, if we are going to apply a sabbatical mindset to this time, sabbatical also does not mean that you're necessarily taking trips around the world. Sabbaticals are a mindset where you're being intentional to figure out, what do I want to achieve in X period of time? So, number one, declaring an intention and then looking at the time available. And with that time available, designing into that time how you're going to work towards that intention. That intention might be, I want to increase skills in AI. That intention may be, my parents are still living, they're in the Midwest. I want to spend some more time with them. Um, and I want to figure out what's next in my life. There, you might have kind of two things going on. I'll plan to be near them, and I will work on this so much time, daily or every other day. Laying out the intention, designing for it so that you have a cadence that you commit to during that time. And number three is not overstructuring it or understructuring it. And this is where people have actually failed their sabbaticals. They take a 6 week or 3 month or 1 year period where they're going to take time off, but they're not deliberate about what they're seeking. And like I said at the beginning, a sabbatical is not the equivalent of taking a long vacation.
You and I, when we got together, what, 2 months ago, we've known each other for over 5 years, and we met for the first time in person in Dana Point, what, 2 months ago. And it was just, it was amazing to finally meet you in person after, we developed this, great relationship through this mutual group that we were a part of. And you showed me, and I asked you, it was like, Annette, tell me what you're doing. I'm really curious. It's like, what's this all about? And you were able to so articulately say, this is my North Star. This is everything that I'm doing is because this is where I'm headed. I have never seen anyone with such specificity on what their ultimate objective is. How how did you get there? And how can people think about that? Because that's where, I think most of us lose our direction because we don't really have a direction, not that clearly.
I, I, yes, I agree. We all have different levels of clarity of where we're trying to go to. Um, and And during our lived experiences and phases of life, the directions we're trying to go to can be different. Um, you hear phrases like, being an earner and then being someone that gives back at a different phase of life. But getting back to the clarity, um, for me, it really came into being the 5 months of 2019 when I took a 5 month sabbatical. And I didn't go away for 5 months. I designed a 5 month sabbatical based on my husband saying to me, Annette, I really think your work is meaningful, but I think it's soul crushing. And at this point, I was not in corporate life. I was running a leadership practice. And he said, would you consider a summer sabbatical? And I declined. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I reflected on it a couple of days and I said, I think you're right. Thank you. So I was running a solo practice with some collaborators. So I needed to finish my client responsibilities. And that left me an August start date. So I determined to use that time frame, August through the end of the year, to step back and look. I thought I was doing my purpose work. I had a practice. My clients were excited and happy. And it was also something that I was living too fully into helping them make everything work. So I stepped back. I was dealing with um, a PhD rich environment that was highly competitive. So I was ending up being a lot of the glue for cohesion with my clients, and that took its toll. When I stepped back, my declared intention for that sabbatical was clarity for 2020 and beyond, because I thought I was already doing the purpose work. And I was like, how do I refine this? And in those 5 months, kind of the baseline questions, and it didn't necessarily need to be 5 months, but that's what it took for me. My baseline questions basically can be synthesized into these two. What makes your heart sing and what breaks your heart? And there's usually personal and professional things that bubble up to the surface. And the closer you can be in alignment with those things, the clearer you can get to on your path to what's next and what's your purpose work and what can be fulfilling and meaningful. And I set out to do that. And I developed a process along the way in my own exploration of creating a map that I can map my personal life and my professional life in a way that I can see it all on one page. And it can give me the clarity of what trade-offs to make.
Wow. That's really impressive. And so if I think about the executives during their time in transition, to have that kind of clarity, it, you have to put blinders on the fear. Um, because, so many people are thinking, well, my runway might be limited, and what if I'm missing out on opportunities? But to have that clarity and that confidence that that you would be preparing yourself to step back into corporate life in a completely renewed, refreshed, maybe more intentional way.
Right. One thing that I really want to call out when you talk about having blinders on for the fear, um, actually, one of the things that is really important in a journey of getting clarity with where you are in life is grappling. Fear doesn't go away. How we recognize and dance with different things in life and the fear and how we deal with it is part of the journey. And sometimes you're right, sometimes it's thrust on us. And right now, my husband is really going through that. Um, he left 2 weeks ago to Texas to be there for his mom and dad while his dad had back surgery. And his dad had back surgery on Monday. And on Wednesday, his mom sustained a fall and she had to have emergency surgery. So both of them have been hospitalized. And today he's meeting with a caseworker to find out what happens next and what the timeline. They're both in now residential rehabilitation. And my husband is a chief executive in a national security company. So he is juggling all these things. And my point being, when things are thrust on us, he clearly feared last week that he might lose both of them in the same week.
Mm.
And what do you do? One of the things we haven't talked about in our self-reflection and in going on these journeys, who are our trusted advisors, our trusted friends and colleagues? And oftentimes when I do fireside chats on this topic, I talk about 3 a.m. friends. Who are your 3 a.m. friends that you could call in a crisis? Your parents are hospitalized. I've had an accident. I've lost a loved one. I'm concerned about my job. These are things that you want to cultivate trusted advisors that you can have real conversations and process through fears. And having, depending on the situation, having doctors and therapists to talk to. Fear doesn't go away, but how we can process it does. And different coping mechanisms that we can turn to also guide us through it.
That's fascinating. And I love the 3 a.m. friend thing. It's because it really makes you think, who can you rely on at 3 a.m.? And that is fascinating. So the trusted advisors and, it's like, who's your tribe?
Right. Absolutely. And reaching out to those that you would take their call, let them know. It was very satisfying. A couple of years ago, I had given uh, a keynote in the evening, and the next day there was a San Diego leaders luncheon. And somebody came up at the break and they said, I heard you last night. And on my way home, I called my friends to let them know I'm their 3 a.m. friend.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's so funny because I think letting people know you're my 3 a.m. friend is uh, important because there is some responsibility there, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, to be somebody's 3 a.m. friend. You know, so many things that are going, but I'd like to open up for questions. Who Nikki had said that she's dealing with something. It's what what the intention of happening may not happen, and people above her and below her have to all buy into it. I don't know, Nikki, if you want to come on
Yep.
and great. What are you dealing with, and how can Annette help?
My mum did die last year. Um, and I've really been suffering with that. I'd just taken a new job because I thought she was going to be fine, and then she was gone.
Nikki,
And
I'm
I'll be
sorry.
honest, if I'd known, I probably wouldn't have taken my job. But I was brought in to just help with some efficiencies, recently public company. Um, and I spent a year just sort of ignoring um, the chaos in my personal life. And, we're a small public company, but a lot of changes were made. I got rid of like 4 full-time hires, 6 full-time consultants. People stopped working from 8 in the morning until midnight. And now my team, which is much smaller, but is a lot more efficient. And I feel like I came in, I did what they asked me to do. And now suddenly I'm dealing with some of, the things that I avoided dealing with. And I am unraveling. And I told my boss actually yesterday, and I've been working on my career, my on how to my succession planning. And the best person for that job, though, she's amazing technically, but her managerial skills are perhaps not what they should be to inspire the way she needs to inspire if she's going to step into a VP or an executive role. And there's a lot of distrust between her and my boss because they couldn't communicate apparently for the year prior to me showing up. And I spoke to some of my team members about, just kind of, what they want to do, where they want to go. And I realized that not all of them are willing to report to this woman, that they're not confident that she'll look after them. And my boss isn't confident that she'll look after them. And I feel like if I had another year, I could probably get her there, maybe. But I don't know if I can work another year. And I told my boss, I'm going to take a leave. I'm going to have to because I'm going to unravel at work, and that's not going to be pretty. And and I was honest, and I'm still working. But I realized that my plans, it just might not happen. And I don't know what to do about the person I'm, sort of cultivating, because if they if I leave and they decide to replace me, she's got nowhere to go. So then she'll leave.
Right.
It's just like
So
it's a stack of cards that I thought I was building a foundation for, and then just as time has happened and evolved, and I realized I might not actually be able to get everyone where I was hoping to, and it doesn't really matter all the work and plans that I put in. There's a strong possibility it's all going to
And
unravel.
that seems like something that could happen, that would
Anyway.
be a common issue, right, Annette?
Mhm.
yes, yes. So um, Nikki, one, my sympathies and condolences for your loss.
Thank
Um, and I want to express my appreciation for your awareness and your need to care for yourself. That's real. Um, your need to step away is also real. Um, and you need you and the people that are responsible for the ongoing business need to figure out what are some resources to help scaffold, help grow and evaluate the capacity of the people that you're talking about. It sounds like you have some key person risks, and identifying what is the path to see the growth and potential or not, and identify that, and put together a plan as if you're not there. Um,
And
because,
I'm going to step in here for a minute just because we have 6 minutes left. But
right,
Annette, it seems like this is a perfect case study of when a company would call you. Because
exactly.
this is not like let's think about a
No,
sabbatical
no,
situation. This
no.
is the sabbatical needs to happen. We have to design this so that yes, we have to build scaffolding, we have to build capabilities, and we have to architect it so that Nikki can take time off before there's some kind of major issue, right?
Right.
And I mean, this sounds like I mean you're being
This,
called to duty
right. Um,
and dealing with somebody I mean almost a company that could potentially be in crisis if they don't look at this now.
yes, they are in a fragile, using the word you used earlier, situation. And yes, and this is the kind of thing that sometimes, like when I'm meeting with a client next week, they've got a 3-year plan of their exit. So there are some people that are trying to do things ahead of some kind of risk or some kind of specific challenge. But these kinds of challenges do happen. And you're right, that is part of the advisory work. Um, Nikki, I'm hoping that you've had some takeaways today that might help you think about how you'll approach this and talk with your boss and identify the risk, and some different pathways that you can take to address that. Um,
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't think my team's going to unravel. I think that they will, because they're all very professional and responsible. And my boss basically told me that she wanted to support me and she would keep my position open and they would figure it out. She would just have to step in more. And I
and
don't know if that's good or bad.
right, right. And as much as we need to do things, it is very much in our human nature to know that we need to do something, and it's hard to let go at the same
Yep.
time.
Boom.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
fascinating. Well, it sounds like the two of you may need to connect afterwards. We just have a few you guys are meant to talk to each other. Nikki, you know that, right? And Nikki happens to be a friend. I love Nikki. With Nikki, I will be your 3 a.m.
Thank you.
friend.
Yeah, I was about to
And,
say, well, yeah, I was just thinking,
I
well, I'm gonna have to
yeah, and
phone
you
Christy at
can
3.
you
You
can
can phone
count
me at
Steve.
3.
Yeah, you can
So
count in there as well. You're an important person to us. But, so any
I
other questions? Oh, go ahead, Annette.
um too, I want to be very careful. I do this for a profession. I also don't believe in selling from the stage. So I
Oh,
want to
I
be
know.
very clear
Yeah.
about that.
But it's just so crazy. It's like Nikki's situation. I was thinking about it like, okay, intentionally we go about this, but
Right,
then she has a real live thing that
right.
would call upon a company to immediately consider it because it sounds like there's a bit of fragility within the organization, the whole organization. And Nikki is a great leader. She develops great people, and there's still a deficit. So it's fascinating. But yes, you're not selling. I just think that the two of you need to connect
Thank you,
because
Yes.
I
Christina. Thank
love you
you.
both. I mean, Annette is like a rock. So anyway, but any other last minute questions before we have to sign off?
You need to make these longer.
I know. Well, yes, and we know that. And sometimes, yeah, it's definitely beneficial. So but Annette, thank
I've
you. You have created so much thought-provoking. Any final words?
I've put my contact information in the chat.
And we'll
Uh,
send it out with a recording to everyone.
and I hope that this has landed with you. And over the weekend or over the next week, if you have any thoughts of something that landed with you or I didn't understand something, shoot me a note. I did see Irene had one question about the integrated impact map. Um, what I do for a profession is I do wayfinding and I do collaborative co-design of sabbaticals. So I go with people through the process to step through how to build their own. So that's not a 20-minute or a 1 hour webinar kind of thing. It's work together.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I love what you're doing, Annette, and it's so fun how we got introduced so many years ago, and through Chris Brogan and then how we're
And through,
staying. Yeah,
yes,
it's so fun. I really have so much respect for you. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing. And it's like that thoughtful building, and you're creating a category. You really are. And I think it's wonderful. It's great to see it in action. I just count my blessings because you're somebody that I've gotten to know a bit. And I look forward to keeping tabs on you and seeing where in the world you end up going and all the fun things that you're exploring. So
thank
you're
you.
definitely a person to watch, and this is certainly a category to watch as well,
Yes,
especially as our economy and society evolve. It's
right.
fascinating.
Thank you for being here and thank you for listening. And I hope that you um, have a good takeaway and something lands with you.
Awesome. And next week we have Taya Watkins, who's going to talk about an intentional leader, and so more on us, in the same vein. But thank you all for being with us. It's great to see you, and Annette, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Bye, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thank you.